I turned $3,000 into over $20,000 in less than 24 hours. And in today's video, I want to share with you the step-by-step process how I was able to achieve these results. I'm going to be showing you my 4-step checklist on how I was able to identify the higher timeframes to capturing the trade on the lower timeframes. And then I'll be showing you guys my live session where I took the trade in real time. So with that being said, let's get right into the video. So right here, you can see I have my 4-step checklist. And this 4-step checklist I use every single day to identify if there's going to be an A+ opportunity in the markets. And you'll see whenever I have this 4-step checklist checked off, that's when I know that I have a potential of an A+ setup occurring in the market. And that's where I will look to put on more size than usual. And that's how I'm able to capture these big P&Ls in the market, risking a very little amount of money. So the first thing that we look for is the bigger picture. What is going on the higher time frames? Second, we look at intraday fundamentals. Is there any news event? Do we have earnings? Is there something fundamentally changing with the overall company? Number 3, technical analysis. What type of trade management system are you going to be using intraday to capture these higher time frame moves? And number 4, type of order flow / volume. Is there any sort of relative strength? Do we have any relative weakness? What type of order flow do we have that's going to give us a potential edge in the markets? So I'm going to be breaking down the 4-step checklist in more detail, and then we're going to go on to some examples, and then of course my live trading at the end of the video. So let's get into step number 1 of the checklist. And number 1 out of the checklist is the bigger picture. And essentially what the bigger picture means is zooming out on the charts and seeing what the higher time frames is doing. And there's only 1 or 3 options. Number 1 being, is the market uptrending, right? We want to be capturing some sort of trend in the market, right? A trend in the market means it's consistently making higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, or we're going to be looking for number 2, which is a downtrend, which is the complete opposite, where price is making lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, and continuing towards the downside. What we want to be looking for on the higher time frames is a trade within an uptrend or within a downtrend. Where we don't want to be trading is number 3, where price is consolidating on the higher time frame. When price is ranging in between highs and lows, that's what's called consolidation or chop. And whenever we have this on the higher time frames, this usually indicates that we do not have any higher time frame setups, and we really want to stay away when price is consolidating on the higher time frames. So higher time frames, this can be on the weekly time frame, the daily time frame, the 1-hour time frame. I consider the higher time frames anything that's not intraday, anything that's not the 1 or 5 minute. So with the bigger picture out of the way, now we can go into the second step of the 4-step checklist. And the second step is intraday fundamentals. Essentially what intraday fundamentals is there any sort of news event or any sort of major event that is going to affect the individual ticker that you're playing? So the first thing that we have is news, right? Usually news is red folder news. This can be found on the economic calendar. And whenever we have news, especially red folder news, indicates that there's something going on in the market. Do we have any major news events like CPI, FOMC, any sort of major news event that's going to impact the market intraday? Next, what I have is earnings. It's when major companies in the indices report their earnings once a quarter. And a lot of the times, whenever companies have earnings, we usually have a potential earnings run up, or we have a play that we can look for after earnings. So you'll see a lot of my higher time frame A+ setups occur around these times. So that's why I always look for these earnings plays, because there's always great opportunity when there's an injection of liquidity and volatility in the markets. And then we also have the actual fundamentals of the company, right? Is there any significant fundamental shift in the company that's going to cause the price to gravitate towards the upside or the downside, depending on the fundamentals of the company? I don't really pay attention to this as much since I am a momentum trader. The main thing that we look for is an injection of volatility and liquidity, which is essentially red folder news and earnings, right? I don't pay attention to fundamentals as much. This can obviously affect the market on a longer term scale. So now let's go on to our third step of the 4-step checklist. So the third is technical analysis. And this basically means what sort of setups that we have, our trade management or entries, targets, stops, what's going on the intraday to be able to capture that higher time frame move. So the first thing is trade management. What's our risk? What's our reward? What are we looking for, right? Does the risk reward ratio make sense? Majority of the times when you do have a higher time frame setup, we're always going to have a super nice risk reward ratio. We also have to ask yourself what type of setups that we're looking for intraday. What are our entry models looking like? Are we looking for the break and retest? Is this a breakout? Are we playing a reversal? What is going on intraday, and how are we going to be able to capture this higher time frame move? And then what we have is targets and stops. Where are we going to look to take profits to maximize our higher time frame move? Where's our stop going to be in place in case we're wrong on this setup? What are we looking for? These are very important things to understand, especially when we're trying to capture these higher time frame moves, right? Just because we have a higher time frame thesis doesn't mean we just go and blindly buy, right? We still have to have risk management, we still have to have proper entry models, and we still have to have an edge in the markets. Now let's go on to our fourth and final step of the checklist. And number 4 being type of order flow / volume. This is one of my favorite personally, is being able to identify the relative strength and weakness in a ticker. Majority of the times whenever we do have some sort of bullish news event, a lot of times what we'll have is relative strength compared to the overall indices. So for example, if I'm trading Tesla, Nvidia, Apple, I'm going to compare the stock to its major indice, being the NASDAQ or the QQQ. I want to see if it's relatively strong compared to the QQQ or if it's relatively weak. And then what we also look for, it kind of coincides with relative strength and weakness, is divergence, right? Do we have bullish divergence? Do we have bearish divergence? What is going on, and how are we able to capitalize and understand what type of divergence we have on the higher time frames? So before we get into some examples, let's quickly go over this 4-step checklist again and how can we implement this in real time. So the first thing that we look for is bigger picture, higher time frames. What's going on the higher time frames? And essentially how this works is that you have to go from the top all the way towards the bottom, right? We can't start off at type of order flow / volume and move our way back up towards the higher time frames. We have to start off with number 1, bigger picture, higher time frames. And then we have to go on to the intraday fundamentals, right? What's affecting the market intraday that we can look for a potential trading opportunity. After the first 2, we can then go on to intraday, which is understanding technical analysis, right? What type of setups do we have? What's our risk management approach? Where are entries? Where are exits looking like? And then we can go on to number 4, being type of order flow / volume. Do we have any relative strength? Do we have a potential edge in the markets where we can look to trade the individual ticker compared to the Qs? So we have to start from the top and move our way down, and we can't start from the bottom and move our way up. So we have to follow this 4-step checklist in order if we do want to capture these higher time frame moves. So with that being said, let's go into some real life examples and see what this looks like in real time. So right here, you can see we're on the bigger picture time frame. We're on a weekly chart here. This is on Nvidia. This was earlier this year. You can see how bullish price is. You can see we have a very big push towards the upside. We're forming that flag. What can we expect? Continuation towards the upside. The reason being is because we have a very bullish uptrend on the weekly time frame. We have a flag forming. We're expecting continuation towards the upside. As you can see right here, what's next is that we have the daily chart. So we went from the weekly time frame, now we're going on to the daily time frame. As you can see, what we're forming is this bullish pendant. You can see that we're forming this bullish pendant. We reclaimed our key areas being our 900. We can expect continuation towards the upside because, right, the weekly time frame is bullish, the daily time frame is bullish. We have clear levels being that all-time highs at your 980. So what can we expect? That continuation break towards the upside. Just by looking at the weekly time frame and the daily time frame, we can expect some continuation towards the upside. So now what we have is intraday fundamentals. So the higher time frame is bullish, the weekly, the daily chart. What we now have is a pre-earnings run-up. So earnings was reporting the week after, right? The higher time frames was bullish. For earnings, we're fairly bullish based off the news report. So what we can expect is a pre-earnings run-up towards the upside on Nvidia. So now what we have is technical analysis. So the higher time frame was bullish. we had a pre-earnings run up towards the upside. You can see in the pre-market coming into this day, we had a gap towards the upside or above our key levels being our 922. So the setups that we're going to be looking for coming into the day is going to be an opening drive play and a gap and go. So we're looking for continuation towards the upside because the higher time frame is bullish. In the pre-market, we're gapping up as well. We're gapping above our 922 level. So what we're going to be looking for is a gap and go towards the upside. And we also have a 5-minute break and retest. So you can see price, we broke above 922. What we're going to be looking for is a retest of this level for a continuation towards the upside. So you can see in this case, so on the second chart right here, you can see price broke above. We come back down for the retest of our 922. You can see these candles are holding, right? Price never closed underneath the key level, right? Wicks do the damage, bodies tell the story. We end up holding this 922 level very nicely. Buyers are stepping in off this level. Once we get that confirmation candle, that's where we look to enter with a stop just to break below, and we look for that continuation towards the upside on the market. So right here, what we have is order flow. And order flow means any sort of relative strength, right? Divergence. What are we looking for? And you can see there's clear relative strength on NVIDIA, right? The left-hand side is the Qs. NVIDIA is on the right-hand side. You can see right off the bat, the QQQ, we end up dropping towards the downside, whereas on the right-hand side, you can see NVIDIA was holding up within the first 30 minutes. So whenever the Qs end up bouncing back towards the upside, NVIDIA had such a strong push towards the upside due to the fact that it has relative strength. So that means if the QQQ reclaims your opening range candle, that should mean that NVIDIA is going to launch towards the upside due to the relative strength compared to the QQQ. So now let's go on to another example that I have. So as you can see here, we're on Amazon, and based off the higher time frames, what we have is a gap down. So we have a gap down in the market. We have a clear level of support, right? Which usually means that there's a bunch of liquidity resting underneath that level. So what we're going to be doing is looking for continuation towards the downside to fill this gap all the way back from February earlier that year, which was actually a earnings gap up. So we have a gap down. We're looking to fill the gap that it previously made all the way back from February. Intraday fundamentals. So as you can see here, what we have is a post earnings play. So what you can see on the higher time frames is that we end up moving lower due to the fact that we had bad earnings on Amazon. As you can see, Amazon stock tumbles 11% as profit revenue outlook disappoints. So we have a bearish downtrend. We have bearish news that's causing the downtrend. Now let's go on to the technical analysis. So right here, you can see technical analysis, the setup coming into market open. So we already know that price is bearish. So what we're going to be doing is looking for potential gap and go towards the downside. You can see we're also looking for the opening drive play. Whenever we do have earnings, we always look for a potential opening drive play towards the downside. And what we have is also a gap fill, right? I talked about that gap all the way back from February. So we're leaning more towards the downside on Amazon based off all those scenarios. And you can see what we also have was that pre-market low. So what I drew out really was your opening range candles, right, which also coincide with your pre-market low. As you can see, price here, right, comes back down, tests your pre-market low, but doesn't really show any sort of strength. I'll show you why I entered in here in a second. That was due to the relative weakness, but I entered in risking off your opening candle range high, looking for that flush towards the downside. So and you can see on the right-hand side price, as soon as I entered the stock, we had a very nice push all the way down towards our 161. This was actually on a Friday. I remember this day fairly clearly. The contracts moved like 200%. Absolutely beautiful day on this one. 200% move in about 7 minutes, which was absolutely beautiful. Now we can go on to the order flow, and now you can see in this case what we have is clear relative weakness in the market. You can see this is what the Qs looks like within the first 30 minutes. You can see Amazon, clear relative weakness towards the downside, right? You can see it's staying heavy right off the bat, right? On this push up, as you can see within the first 10 minutes, you have kind of a big push towards the upside on the Qs, whereas Amazon stayed heavy. This was actually divergence, and this is what's called bearish divergence, and that's how we're able to capture this move towards the downside. So with this being said, let's go on to a more recent example of the trade that I took last week on Tesla that I was able to make over $20,000. So right here, you can see we're on my TradeZilla. This is for Tesla. This was on Thursday. I ended up swinging some contracts, so it says Friday right here, but I ended up making $20,000 on this trade. So in one trade, I made $20,000, but that's not what's important. As I always talk about, what's important is the amount of risk that it took to make this money. So as you can see, I was only risking $3,000 in this case to make that $20,000. Of course, I didn't know I was going to make $20,000. What I knew was I was risking $3,000 on this trade. So I ended up risking $3,000 on my trade. My final P&L ended up being over $20,000, which made it so it was a 6.65 R multiple. Absolutely beautiful trade. I put in $14,000 in this one, and then making over $20,000, which was a net ROI of 134%. Absolutely crazy trade. One of my best trades of the year. This was strictly based off day trades as well, and then making another 20,000, which was absolutely crazy on my long term. But of course, those are unrealized, so I don't really count that. So now let's go on to that 4-step checklist and see exactly how I was able to capture this trade on Tesla. As you can see, we're on the bigger picture time frame here, right? We're on the higher time frames. This was coming into the day on Tesla, and you can see that we're in a very much clear uptrend on the higher time frames, right? This is due to earnings, as I mentioned, but on the higher time frames, we're in a clear uptrend, so we're bullish. We can now go on to the intraday fundamentals. So what happened? Why did price have such a big push towards the upside? Well, the reason being is because we had bullish earnings, right? We had a bullish earnings. Tesla shares jump on profit beat, must prediction of at least 20% vehicle growth next year. So based off of the earnings, right, based off of the higher time frames, right, we're very much bullish coming into the day on Tesla. So we're looking for that post earnings play towards the upside. And based off the technical analysis, as you can see, the setups intraday, what we're looking for is any sort of bullish setup going into the day. We're looking for the opening drive. In this case, right, we look for the 5-minute opening range. I actually took another setup beforehand. I'll talk about this as soon as I go into the TradeZilla charts, but based off the A+ setup, what we're looking for was that 5-minute opening range. Right, price create that 5 opening range. We took that first pullback. This was also an 84% rule. I'll talk about this a little bit more as well. This ended up being my actual second trade on Tesla for that day. And you can see price where we tapped into that 5-minute opening range. We had a nice reaction off that level. Once we had that confirmation candle, we risked off that low, and we're looking for those higher time frame objectives. And you can see price had a beautiful push towards the upside once we got above 250. Really straight push towards the upside. 255. This is just a small glimpse of what it went to. It actually went way higher towards 260 and then almost 270 the next day. So now let's go on to the type of order flow. And as you can see right here, what we have is this 5-minute chart, and what we have is clear relative strength all day, right? If you compare these two charts, the QQQ is on the left-hand side, Tesla is on the right-hand side. You can see the clear relative strength just intraday, right? The higher time frames, we had clear relative strength on the higher time frames coming into the pre-market, and then intraday as well, we had clear relative strength on every single time frame intraday. You can see Tesla really trend day towards the upside compared to Qs, which was really just consolidating. Actually had a downtrend for the day. So you can see the clear relative strength. That's why I was so bullish on Tesla, and that's how we're able to capture that move towards the upside. So with this being said, let's go on to the trading view charts, and then we'll go on to the live session that I had for this day. So you can see right here, we're on Tesla, we're on the trading view chart, an absolutely beautiful move, post earnings play towards the upside. We end up capturing basically the full move intraday. So we end up having a 10% move in the pre-market, or a gap up. We had another 10% move intraday, and we basically captured the contracts from the very bottom, right? Contracts we played was the 252.5s. They went from $2 in the morning, and the very next day ended up being over $16 a contract. So it went from $2 to $16 in one day. It was around an 800% move on the actual contracts. Absolutely crazy, life-changing money was made on this day. And now let's go on to the lower time frames to see exactly the setup that I was looking for. So coming into this day, what I was looking for was basically an opening play towards the upside, right? I was very much bullish on Tesla. I was looking for any sort of dip, any sort of IV flush for continuation higher. So if you go back onto the 1-minute time frame here, you can see that price right off the gates, we had that continued push towards the upside. I wasn't able to capture this opening play, and I'm fine with that because I know that this is an A+ opportunity. So whenever you do have an A+ opportunity, it usually gives us a few potential entry points to look for price to gravitate towards the upside. So right off the bat, what I marked out was this first 1-minute order block, right? We marked out this first 1-minute order block, and I actually took a trade off this first 1-minute order block. So I took a start position with the risk just underneath this order block. What I was looking for was continuation towards the upside. So you can see I ended up having a nice entry right off the bat. It gave me around $1 on the contract, but since I was on a starter position, I never ended up selling at this 250.80 level. So I ended up being up $1 contract to end up taking a full stop loss, which was unfortunate. I actually sold the very bottom. So on the first trade, I had around 20 contracts. I was up $1, ended up losing around 70 cents a contract. So I was down 1,500 on the first setup, but I was fine because I understood that we had an A+ opportunity and that I can always look to re-enter price. So we kind of go right here, zoom out a little bit. what we have is the 84% rule. So what we have is the 84% rule. You can see if I go into the 5-minute chart as well, price, we end up having a clean retest of our 5-minute opening range. So the 5-minute opening range was defended. You can see we have that confirmation candle as well. If the first time I'm wrong, I can always look to re-enter in on the second time, right? This was my first kind of major level, was this 250, but in reality, I was looking for a continuation higher as well. So I waited for price to gravitate towards the upside. You can see on the 1-minute time frame, it was a little bit choppy, right? We had to hold through a little bit of drawdown on the contracts, but you can see that the buyers are stepping in at every single key area. We made its way towards the upside, right? We kept on building those higher lows, and once we broke above this key level being that 251, we had that moonshot towards the upside. I took my first profits here, but really I was looking for that continuation push towards the upside. Ended up being an absolutely beautiful trade, as you can see if I zoom back out here, right? I end up holding a decent amount of contracts to end the day. I honestly could have done a much better job trading this intraday. It should have been a lot bigger of a trade, but obviously that's in hindsight, and looking back on it, I think I did a pretty good job. You can always look back on it, see improvements that you can make, but absolutely beautiful trade on Tesla. We're able to capture the full move. I'll pop up some screenshots here as well. The whole community ended up capturing this trade as well. Beautiful A+ opportunity, and that was identified in the pre-market. As always, if you guys want to watch the pre-market preps, I do them live every single day for free on YouTube at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So with that being said, let's go on to the live session that I had for this day. So right here, you can see I'm on my live recording. This is on Tesla for that post earnings play. I'm basically going to commentate exactly what I was looking for coming into the day and what I was seeing in real time. So right now you can see we're in the pre-market. I'm basically prepping the team to tell them exactly what my top watches are coming into the morning, which is in this case is Tesla. Far, we're up 14% in the market. What I want to see on Tesla, if I want to go for a push towards the upside, is that first dip, right? I want to see an IV flush where the contracts, they're going to be around 100 IV. What I want to see is an IV flush on the contracts where we can potentially move down towards 240. And I want to see that first dip get bought up for that continued move back towards upside. So that's what I'll be looking for coming into market open. I'll be looking for the IV flush on Tesla, first dip to get bought up for a move back towards the highs. So you can see right there, I talked about looking for that first dip on Tesla to continue towards upside. I talked about this a little bit more detail in the actual pre-market. When coming into market open, I kind of briefly went over it, but the main watch coming into the day was that Tesla for that push towards upside because it had earnings. As for Tesla, yeah, we had a mini dip. I wouldn't consider that a dip. That first candle mini pullback towards the downside on Tesla. The IV is down towards 80 now on that first candle, but we're either going to be looking for the reclaim of your 245.53 or potential a bigger dip in Tesla. Yeah, so with Tesla, you can see the relative strength so far in Tesla. Now, with the Qs pulling back here, the key level is going to be that 1-minute order block in that 5-minute opening range. Now we can essentially use that 1-minute order block as risk now once it pulls back into this area. So right there, you can see I talked about Tesla. We can use this 1-minute order block as a potential entry point, right? We end up missing that opening drive play towards the upside, but now we can look for that first dip on Tesla for that continued push higher. I took a starter on the 252 50 calls. If it dips a little bit deeper into this order block, the risk is below the order block. So if it dips a little bit deeper, I'll add more into the 252s here on Tesla. But Tesla so far is showing some relative strength. If it can dip a little bit deeper into the order block, the risk is the bottom, which is your 247.43. So you can see I just entered in a starter position on the 252.5 calls on Tesla. What I was looking for was an entry around this 1-minute order block, risk just underneath, looking for that continuation towards the upside. The reason why I took a starter position was because we already had that opening drive play towards the upside, right? I didn't really want to miss out on the move in case it wanted to just launch higher. So that's why I took a starter position, but if it pulled back more into the key level, I was going to look to add into a full position on Tesla. So you can see right there, Tesla ended up gravitating towards high of day, which was our first key level being your 2050.74. I personally did not take any off at high of day, just due to the fact that at a higher time frame thesis, I was in a start position and I really wanted to wait for that higher time frame move on Tesla. Yeah, I ended up cutting as well. That one,
up holding a little bit longer than I wanted to. Higher time frame, hit highs 250. After that, showed real no reaction. After it hit that first one, the 250.70. On Tesla, the higher time frame is still fairly bullish. I'm on Tesla, right? It's gonna break underneath this, most likely this 1 minute order block, but higher time frame swing wise, right? If Tesla now comes really all the way back down towards like 245.53, I wouldn't be opposed to looking for like a longer term swing on this one.
So you can see right there, I just end up cutting Tesla. I mentioned I held it longer than I wanted to just do the higher time frames. It was coming right back into our key level, being our 247.50. But I end up cutting it, just doing my risk on the starter position. I can always look to re-enter on that 84% rule. So on Tesla, where I wasn't too worried about being stopped out, I was only down $1,500 on the starter position. But based off that higher time frame thesis, I can always look to re-enter in a position.
Yeah, I'm backing on the Teslas, the 250.25s. Risk now for me underneath this key swing low on this reclaim.
And you can see right there, I entered in my second position off that reclaim. It was an 84% roll. I didn't have the greatest entries on this day, but what I did have was a strong higher time frame thesis, and that's what matters. I had conviction on my setup based off that higher time frames, and I knew that Tesla, if it wanted to run, it was going to run today because of that post earnings play. So that's why I ended up getting in on Tesla, because I didn't want to miss out on the move. So now I'm in that full position in 60 contracts on the 252.5s, risking off that bottom of that 1 minute order block now, which is your 248.28, looking for that continuation towards the upside. Potentially could come down, retest this level, which is all the way down here. But I kind of just want to see this first dip get bought up after hitting highs. Tesla, the 5 minute, right? Still bullish on the 5 minute. Looks like it's probably going to pull back if it doesn't hold this 5 minute order block here. So you can see right there, I talked about Tesla. I'm very bullish on Tesla. It's taking a little bit longer, but if you're on the 1 minute time frame, you could get a little bit chopped around, but on the higher time frames, 5 minutes, so bullish. It's prime for a move towards the upside. If you can break above 251, we're going to have a big push towards the highs. See the reaction. The main thing is you want to be on the higher time frames. I mean, that's the main thing. If you're on Tesla, like if you're strictly just looking at this on the 1 minute, sometimes it's a little bit choppier, right? Especially on the 1 minute. I mean, it doesn't look the greatest, but if you just kind of zoom out, like, I mean, this 5 minute still looks very prime, right? It's still holding key levels, right? 5 minute, I like to see that break above. Like it shouldn't, it basically right now, since it hit highs, it really, you just kind of want to see it rip. Like you don't want to see it, you could see a pullback, but the pullback is just going to be to right here, right? You want to see this level hold if you want to see some continuation towards upside. So right there, we just broke above high day finally. It took a little bit longer. We were in the trade for around 1 hour, but we finally broke above highs. Now what I wanted to see was that kind of squeeze, push, blow off the top type move towards the upside. I wanted to see that speed and acceleration towards that next key level on the higher time frames. As you can see, right, I mentioned, right, there's really clear targets towards the upside. We just held through the hardest part, so now it should be fairly easy and we should start trending nicely towards the upside. Yeah, but I'm gonna call it here a day as well. Tesla, as I mentioned, as long as it holds this level, I mean, we should see some more upside. I actually need to go to the washroom here. But yeah, Tesla, now this is like gonna be your key level, basically 150.60. You like to see this level hold if you want to see some more upside, right? Because it's your highs, right? Basically this level now. You like to see something like this. If it comes back inside the range, then it's just gonna chill out. But for the best momentum, you like to see essentially this order block, where these old highs be used as now support for move higher. So that's what you want to do, right? Make sure, right, as it makes new highs, right, scale on the ways. But there's a good chance Tesla, if you bar by bar on the higher time frames, right, there's a good chance we do continue towards the upside. The next level is going to be really, the next level I have is 152. If that's a little bit too far away, you can look to scale it once it makes new highs. So you can see right there, I talked about Tesla. We're above our key levels now. I'm very much bullish. I need to head out for the day because it was already 11 o'clock. I haven't sold a single contract on Tesla yet. I was really holding for that higher time frame objective. I was hammering to my group, make sure to buy bar by bar on the higher time frames. There's a good chance we continue higher. If you go look at the Tesla chart on TradingView, man, after it broke above that 251, we really went straight towards the upside the rest of the day. Absolutely beautiful trade, as I mentioned. Great trade, one of the best trades of the year. Hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you did, I'd appreciate if you guys drop me a like and sub, and I'll see you guys next week for a brand new video. Peace.